Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures where humanity always rises. The night sky had always been silent, but on this night, humanity unknowingly listened for the last time without fear. Deep inside a quiet research station, a group of scientists watched their screens with tired eyes. Most of them expected nothing. Space had disappointed them for decades. Signals came and went, full of noise and errors. But then, something appeared that made everyone freeze. A clean signal. Perfect. Ordered. Repeating. It did not look natural. It did not look random. It looked designed. At first, they thought it was a mistake. Machines fail. Software lies. But the signal stayed. It repeated every few minutes, coming from deep space, far beyond any known star system. The room slowly filled with people. Phones rang. Screens lit up. One scientist whispered words that changed everything. "This is not from Earth." No one laughed. No one argued. They all felt it. Humanity was no longer alone. The signal used mathematics. Simple numbers. Patterns that any intelligent mind could understand. It was clean, calm, and strangely polite. News spread fast. Governments were informed within hours. By morning, the secret was already leaking. Social media exploded. People cried. People prayed. People celebrated. For the first time in history, humanity believed aliens had reached out first. They believed the universe had finally answered back. World leaders spoke on television with careful smiles. Scientists gave interviews filled with hope. The word, first contact, was everywhere. Artists painted it. Children learned about it in school the same week. Humanity felt united. Borders felt smaller. Wars felt pointless. If someone out there had spoken to them, then surely the future was bright. The signal kept coming. Always the same message. Always calm. Always perfect. Teams across the world worked together to decode it. They broke it into layers, each one more complex than the last. At first, it felt like a greeting. A hello written in the language of the universe. The scientists smiled as they worked. They believed history would remember them as the first humans to hear another mind from the stars. But one man did not smile. Dr. Elias Monroe sat quietly, watching a detail no one else seemed to care about. The signal timing was too precise. The direction too focused. It was not sent in all directions, like a greeting would be. It was aimed. Like a narrow beam. Like it was meant for someone specific. He said nothing at first. Great moments often silence doubt. But as days passed, the feeling grew heavier. The deeper layers of the signal showed strange gaps. Missing parts. Almost as if something had been removed. Or hidden. Elias brought this up in a closed meeting. The room went quiet. A few people brushed it off. Others looked uncomfortable. Governments became involved more directly. Military officials joined scientific teams. Information began to disappear from public channels. The tone of meetings changed. The signal was still there, still calm, but humanity's excitement slowly mixed with fear. Questions no one wanted to ask began to surface. Why now? Why Earth? Why this signal? Late one night, Elias stayed behind alone. He ran the signal through a new filter, one designed to detect layered intent rather than meaning. What he saw made his hands shake. The message was not just information. It was timing. A countdown hidden inside repetition. Not fast. Not slow. Steady. Patient. At the same moment, deep space telescopes detected something new. A faint movement near the edge of the solar system. Too slow to be a comet. Too controlled to be debris. The data was weak, but it was there. Something was moving with purpose. Humanity still believed this was first contact. They believed they had been chosen. They believed the universe had finally spoken to them. But the truth was already forming in the shadows. The signal was not a greeting. It was not meant for humans at all. And whatever it was meant for was now on the way. The signal did not stop. It continued to arrive at the same time, with the same calm rhythm, as if nothing had changed. To the world, it was still a message of hope. News channels spoke about peace and unity. People gathered to watch the stars. Humanity wanted to believe this moment was beautiful. Inside the research centers, however, the feeling was different. The excitement was fading, replaced by quiet tension. Scientists now worked under watchful eyes. Soldiers stood near doors that once stayed open. Dr. Elias Monroe felt the weight of every second. He had shared his discovery about the hidden timing with only a few trusted minds. Even they struggled to accept it. A countdown did not make sense. Why would a greeting need time? Why would intelligence hide something inside something so simple? The deeper they looked, the less friendly the signal felt. Teams across the world began breaking the message apart in new ways. Not to understand what it said, but to understand what it did. The signal behaved like a key. Each repetition unlocked a tiny change in its structure. These changes were small, almost invisible, but they followed a rule. A rule that had nothing to do with language and everything to do with action. One young analyst noticed something strange. The signal reacted when Earth responded. When humans sent a reply, the next signal adjusted. It shifted slightly, as if it had noticed. That discovery changed the mood completely. This was no longer a one-way greeting. This was interaction. Something out there was listening. Governments ordered silence. No more public responses. No more experiments without approval. Humanity had answered first, and now no one knew what that meant. Elias watched the screens as the signal arrived again. It adjusted once more, even without a reply. That meant something worse. It was not waiting for humans. It was following a schedule. Military analysts joined the meetings. They compared the signal to old human technologies. Old warning systems. Old targeting methods. One pattern stood out. The signal was directional. Narrow. Precise. Like a beam sent between two known points. Earth was not the target. Earth was standing in the way. This idea spread quietly through classified rooms. The signal was not meant for humanity. It was meant for someone else. Someone who would understand it fully. Humans had only seen the surface. Whatever the message truly was, it was passing through Earth by accident. Elias could not stop thinking about the movement near the edge of the solar system. New data came in every hour. The object was real. It was large. Not one object, but many moving together. They followed a path that matched the direction of the signal. That was no coincidence. A private meeting was called with the highest leaders on Earth. Scientists spoke carefully. Military officers spoke plainly. The truth was simple and terrifying. Humanity had intercepted a message between alien powers. One of them was coming. The other had already spoken. Some leaders wanted to send a warning. Others wanted to stay silent. Fear divided them. If they spoke again, they might draw attention. If they stayed quiet, they might already be too late. In the end, fear won. Humanity went silent. No replies. No signals. Just listening. The signal did not care. It continued its countdown. Each repetition brought it closer to something. Elias watched the numbers shift. The pattern was clear now. The signal marked distance, not time. It measured how close something was getting. That night, Elias sat alone again, staring at the stars. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of aliens as friends or enemies. No one had imagined being ignored. No one had imagined being nothing more than background noise. New images arrived from deep space. The moving objects were clearer now. Massive shapes, cold and dark, traveling with perfect control. They did not slow down. They did not hide. They acted like they had done this many times before. Humanity still told itself this was first contact. But inside locked rooms, the truth was clear. The signal was not an invitation. It was a message of coordination. A warning sent too late. And Earth had heard it by mistake. Silence became humanity's loudest response. After the decision to stop sending replies, the research centers felt colder, heavier. Screens still glowed with data, but hope no longer lived there. The signal continued, calm and steady, as if nothing had changed. To the public, it was still a mystery full of wonder. To those who knew the truth, it was a shadow slowly moving closer. Dr. Elias Monroe stood among other scientists as new data arrived. The signal's pattern was now clear beyond doubt. It was not counting time. It was counting distance. Every repetition marked progress. Something was moving closer through space, using the signal as a guide. The idea spread quietly through the room. This was not communication in the human sense. It was navigation. More details emerged as they studied older records. Similar patterns appeared in forgotten cosmic noise from decades ago. Weak. Incomplete. Ignored at the time. Humanity had likely crossed this signal before, too early to understand it. This time, they had noticed. This time, they had listened. Military leaders demanded answers. Scientists gave what they could. The signal was a warning, but not for humans. It spoke of danger, boundaries, and claimed paths through space. Words like territory and clearance appeared in deeper layers. This was not peace. This was traffic. Something was traveling between stars, and Earth was standing in the middle of its road. Telescopes now tracked the incoming objects clearly. They were not ships in the human sense. No windows. No engines burning bright. They moved with silent control, adjusting direction without visible force. Their shapes were unfamiliar, built for function, not beauty. They did not slow as they entered the outer system. That alone frightened the military more than any weapon. A theory formed among the scientists. The signal was a warning sent ahead of the travelers. A message telling others to move aside. Humanity had misunderstood it as a greeting. Worse, humanity had answered. That reply may have been noticed, logged, and dismissed. Elias felt a deep sense of dread. Humanity had always believed first contact would change everything. It had. Just not in the way anyone hoped. They were not meeting explorers. They were witnessing a routine operation by a civilization far older and far less curious. Governments argued behind closed doors. Some wanted to reveal the truth to the public. Others feared panic more than invasion. The decision was delayed again and again. Meanwhile, the signal continued to mark distance. The objects were now close enough to affect sensors. Gravity readings shifted slightly. Space itself seemed to bend around them. One late update changed everything. The signal shifted tone for the first time. Not in pattern, but in priority. A new layer activated. Elias recognized it instantly. It was an alert. Something unexpected had occurred. That something was Earth. The message adjusted its path calculations. The incoming objects changed formation. They spread out slightly, as if preparing for contact. Not peaceful contact. Physical contact. The meaning was clear. Earth was now classified as an obstacle. Military fleets were placed on high alert. Weapons were prepared that no human had ever used in battle. But even as orders were given, everyone knew the truth. Humanity was reacting, not acting. They were late to their own future. Elias watched the signal arrive again. It felt colder now, less patient. The countdown accelerated. Distance was closing faster than expected. Whatever was coming had increased speed. That meant urgency. That meant Earth mattered now, but only as a problem to solve. Humanity still told itself stories of peace and unity. News channels spoke carefully, hiding fear behind calm words. But deep inside command rooms and research halls, one truth stood firm. Aliens had not reached out to humanity. Humanity had overheard something they were never meant to hear. The discovery changed everything. Not because humans were special, but because they were small. And for the first time since looking up at the stars, humanity understood something terrifying. The universe had not noticed them yet. But it was about to. The truth spread slowly, like a crack moving through glass, silent but impossible to stop. Inside the deepest research centers, scientists finally agreed on what no one wanted to say aloud. The signal was not a greeting. It was not curiosity. It was a system. A cold, working system built by a civilization that did not care who stood in its path. Dr. Elias Monroe listened as the final analysis was presented. The words were simple, but their meaning was heavy. The signal was never meant for humans. It was sent from one alien power to another, a warning sent ahead of a moving force. Humanity had mistaken a notice of passage for first contact. The signal described routes, permissions, and responses. It explained how to deal with interference. Interference like planets. Interference like life. As more layers were decoded, references appeared again and again to another species. A species known only through fragments and old cosmic echoes. They were not explorers. They were not diplomats. They were consumers of space, moving from system to system, stripping resources, erasing resistance, and leaving silence behind. The civilization that sent the signal was not attacking. It was warning others to stay clear. The ones coming did not ask questions. Telescopes confirmed the worst fear. The objects entering the solar system were not scouts. They were part of a larger movement. More signals were detected far beyond them, too weak to decode but following the same structure. This was not a single event. It was a pattern repeated across the galaxy. Humanity was not special. Humanity was late. Military leaders demanded options, but none sounded real. The incoming force showed no signs of communication, no attempt to understand. Their technology bent gravity, ignored radiation, and reshaped space around them. Every scan showed layers of defense and control far beyond human design. Some scientists believed these beings no longer thought like individuals. They acted like a system, a living machine with one goal: expansion without delay. Elias realized something even more terrifying. The signal described responses to resistance. Entire sections detailed how obstacles were removed. Energy use. Planet cracking. Atmospheric cleansing. Life was not an enemy. It was waste. The public was still unaware. Governments continued to delay the truth, hoping for time that did not exist. But silence could not hide reality forever. Strange effects began appearing across the solar system. Satellites drifted off course. Communications flickered. The sun's behavior showed tiny changes, as if something was pulling at forces humans barely understood. Panic started leaking through controlled messages. People felt it even if they did not know why. The sky no longer felt distant. In a final closed meeting, the conclusion was spoken clearly. Humanity was not being contacted. Humanity was being bypassed. The aliens did not come to conquer Earth. They came to move through it. And if Earth remained in the way, it would be removed. The realization broke something deep inside every human mind present. All the stories, all the hopes, all the dreams of meeting others among the stars collapsed into a single truth. The universe was not waiting for humanity. It was already busy. Elias stood alone later, watching the signal arrive again. The calm rhythm continued, unchanged, uncaring. It did not threaten. It did not warn Earth. It simply announced progress. The objects were now close enough to be seen by civilian telescopes. Dark shapes against the stars, slow but unstoppable. Social media filled with questions. Governments could no longer hide the truth. Humanity finally understood. Aliens had not reached out first. They had reached past. And the discovery changed everything, because now humanity had only one choice left: to move aside, or to prove, for the first time, that they would not be ignored. Fear no longer stayed behind closed doors. It spilled into the streets, into homes, into every quiet moment when people looked up at the sky. Governments finally spoke, but their words came too late to bring comfort. Humanity now knew the truth. The signal was not for them. The objects in space were not visitors. They were travelers, and Earth was in their way. Dr. Elias Monroe listened to the global announcement in silence. He had imagined this moment many times, but the reality felt heavier than any theory. The world reacted in waves. Some denied it. Some prayed. Some demanded action. The idea that Earth could be erased without hatred or anger was harder to accept than war. The incoming force continued its approach without change. No response to human messages. No reaction to pleas or threats. The signal still marked distance, calm and precise. Military fleets moved into position around Earth and the Moon, forming the first true planetary defense in human history. For the first time, all nations acted together, not out of unity, but out of shared fear. Humanity stood as one species, facing something that did not see species at all. Scientists worked without rest. They searched the signal for weakness, for hesitation, for anything human. They found nothing. The language of the message was not emotional. It was mechanical. It described procedures. If resistance was detected, force would increase. If obstacles remained, they would be removed. No hatred. No anger. Just process. Elias noticed a detail others missed. The signal included a pause point. A moment where calculation adjusted. It was not a stop, but a check. A moment where the system evaluated conditions ahead. That moment was approaching. Earth would soon be measured. As the objects crossed deeper into the solar system, new effects appeared. The Moon's orbit shifted slightly. Space stations reported strange gravity waves. Astronauts described a pressure they could not explain, as if space itself was being pushed aside. Humanity realized these beings were not simply moving through space. They were reshaping it. The first direct contact did not come as a message. It came as action. One of the objects released a smaller unit, which moved toward the outer planets. Not toward Earth. It scanned, tested, measured. Human probes that approached it stopped working instantly. No explosion. No damage. Just silence. Systems shut down as if turned off. Military leaders debated attack. Some believed showing strength was the only option. Others warned that any aggression could trigger the very response described in the signal. In the end, humanity hesitated. That hesitation may have saved them or doomed them. The signal changed again. For the first time, Earth was referenced directly. Not as a name, but as a mass, a position, a resource field. Elias watched the translation appear on the screen. Earth was now officially logged as an obstruction. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just present. That night, people across the world saw the objects with their own eyes. Dark shapes moving against the stars, slow and steady. No lights. No sound. Just motion. Children cried. Adults stood in silence. The universe felt smaller and far more dangerous. Inside the deepest command center, a final option was discussed. A last, desperate plan. Humanity could activate experimental technology, something never tested on this scale. It might disrupt the signal. It might confuse the incoming force. Or it might confirm humanity as resistance. The risk was total. Elias was asked for his opinion. He spoke carefully. The signal described one thing clearly. Resistance would be removed. But it also showed something else. The system adapted. It learned. It adjusted. If humanity did nothing, Earth would be erased without thought. If humanity acted, even failed, they would be noticed. The choice was made. Humanity would not move aside quietly. The experiment was prepared. Power grids shifted. Satellites aligned. For the first time, Earth aimed not a weapon, but a message of defiance written in energy and mathematics. As the system activated, the signal paused at the checkpoint. For a fraction of a moment, the calm rhythm broke. The incoming force adjusted course slightly. Not away from Earth, but toward it. Humanity had made itself visible. And the trap they had fallen into was now fully closed. The moment humanity acted, the universe responded. The experimental system sent its pulse outward, not as a weapon, but as a clear declaration of presence. Energy moved through space in controlled waves, bending math and physics just enough to be noticed. For a brief second, the signal that had ruled everything hesitated. That hesitation was small, almost invisible, but to those watching the screens, it felt like a scream. Dr. Elias Monroe felt his breath stop as new data poured in. The incoming force had adjusted its calculations. Earth was no longer just an obstruction. Earth was now a variable. The signal changed tone again. Not faster. Not louder. Just sharper. New layers activated, layers that had never appeared before. They described evaluation, threat assessment, resource cost. Humanity was being judged. Military leaders watched as symbols appeared that no one fully understood, but the meaning was clear enough. The system was deciding whether Earth was worth removing or worth avoiding. Around the world, people felt strange effects. Power grids flickered. Animals reacted with fear. The sky looked wrong, stretched in ways no human language could explain. The objects in space slowed slightly, then spread out into a wider formation. This was not fear. This was preparation. Human fleets held position. Weapons stayed locked. Humanity waited, balanced between action and silence. Elias understood the danger now more than ever. The system they faced did not hate. It did not rush. It calculated. And calculation could be far more deadly than anger. The signal revealed more of its structure as it adapted to the new variable. Elias and his team worked non-stop, pulling meaning from patterns. They learned that this force had encountered resistance before. Many times. Civilizations had tried to fight. Some had tried to hide. Some had tried to communicate. All responses were logged. All outcomes were recorded. None had stopped the advance. But something was different this time. The system slowed more than expected. Its path bent slightly, not to avoid Earth, but to observe it. Humanity's pulse had not been ignored. It had been interesting. That alone was terrifying. A smaller unit detached again, this time moving directly toward Earth's defensive line. It did not attack. It scanned. Human sensors struggled to read it, but one thing was certain. It was learning. It analyzed human technology, human energy use, human communication. It saw a species that was young, divided, but rapidly adaptive. Inside the command center, fear turned into focus. Humanity had no time left for denial. If they were to survive, they had to change the rules. Elias proposed a dangerous idea. The signal that guided the system could also limit it. It followed rules, routes, permissions. If humanity could understand those rules deeply enough, they might exploit them. Not by fighting the force, but by confusing its process. The idea spread quickly. Scientists and engineers worked together, sharing knowledge across borders without delay. Humanity's greatest weakness had always been division. Now, that weakness faded. Survival demanded unity, and unity came fast. The signal paused again at another checkpoint. The system recalculated. For the first time, the pause lasted longer than expected. The smaller unit near Earth adjusted its position, keeping distance, watching. Humanity held its breath. Elias noticed a flaw. The system assumed certain limits. It expected slow change, gradual progress. Humanity was not gradual. Human history was full of sudden leaps made under pressure. The system did not fully understand creativity born from fear. Using the signal's own structure, humans began building a response not meant to destroy, but to overload prediction. Rapid shifts in energy use. Randomized patterns. Controlled chaos. To the system, Earth no longer behaved like a simple obstruction. It behaved like something unstable, something costly to calculate. The signal reacted immediately. New warnings activated. The system increased observation, but also increased distance slightly. That movement was small, but it was real. Humanity had not won. But for the first time, the force had adjusted because of them. Across the world, people felt it. The pressure eased slightly. The sky returned closer to normal. Hope did not return, but resolve did. Humanity understood now. They were not strong enough to defeat what was coming, but they might be unpredictable enough to survive it. Elias watched the stars and realized a deep truth. The discovery had truly changed everything. Aliens had not reached out first. Humanity had stepped into a vast machine and forced it to notice something new. And the system, ancient and unstoppable, was now deciding how dangerous humans might become if allowed to continue. Humanity did not celebrate the small change in the enemy's movement. There was no joy, only focus. The system had adjusted, and that meant one thing was now clear. Humans were no longer invisible. Dr. Elias Monroe stood in the command center as streams of data flowed like rivers of light across the walls. Every nation was connected. Every lab shared its findings without delay. Fear had stripped away pride, and survival had replaced politics. The ancient force in space continued to observe, its smaller unit holding position just beyond Earth's defenses, silent and patient. The signal still arrived, but its structure grew more complex, as if it was rewriting itself to better understand the strange behavior of this young species. Elias noticed that the system was no longer just calculating Earth's position. It was studying human reaction speed, creativity, and coordination. Humanity was being measured not as a planet, but as a problem. The realization changed how people thought. If they were being studied, then every action mattered. Every pattern sent a message. Human engineers began to act with intention. They changed energy outputs, shifted satellite paths, and altered communication rhythms in ways that broke prediction models. Not randomly, but creatively. The goal was not chaos, but confusion. The system preferred order. Humans gave it complexity. The smaller unit reacted, adjusting its scans more frequently, drawing closer, then pulling back. It was learning, but learning cost time. Time was the one resource humanity needed. As days passed, something unexpected happened. The signal began to echo human patterns. It adapted faster, copying elements of human behavior. Elias understood the danger. The system was improving. Humanity could not win a race of raw intelligence. But they could change the race itself. Elias proposed activating dormant human assets, old ideas once rejected as too risky. Artificial minds designed not for logic alone, but for intuition. Systems that could guess instead of calculate. Many feared this step, but the choice was clear. Humanity needed to fight a machine with something it did not understand. The artificial minds were awakened, not as rulers, but as partners. They were given one task: find unpredictability. As they integrated into global systems, human response changed again. Decisions became faster, bolder. The signal reacted sharply. New defensive layers activated around the incoming force. This was not curiosity anymore. This was caution. The system had recognized potential danger. Not immediate, but future. Humanity was no longer just an obstacle. Humanity was becoming a risk. The smaller unit finally made a move toward Earth's orbit. Not attacking, not scanning, but signaling. A narrow beam touched the outer edge of human defenses. No damage followed. Instead, data flowed. A simple statement translated by both human minds and artificial ones. Resistance increases cost. Rerouting is preferable. The message stunned everyone. This was not communication as humans understood it. It was negotiation without emotion. The system was offering a choice. Move aside, or continue to raise the cost of removal. Humanity's leaders listened, but the answer had already formed across the planet. There was nowhere to move. Earth was not a ship. Humanity could not reroute itself. Elias watched as human systems responded, not with words, but with action. Energy patterns shifted again. Defensive networks tightened. The message was clear. Earth would not move. The system paused longer than ever before. The signal slowed. Calculations deepened. For the first time, the incoming force reduced forward motion by a measurable amount. Humanity had forced a delay. The cost of removal was rising. Around the world, people felt the change. The pressure in the air eased further. The sky looked clearer. Fear remained, but something new stood beside it. Determination. Humanity had discovered a hidden strength. Not weapons. Not numbers. But refusal. The refusal to behave as expected. Elias understood the deeper truth now. Humanity's greatest power was not technology, but adaptability. The system faced civilizations that followed patterns. Humanity broke them. As the stars shifted slowly above Earth, the ancient force continued its calculations. It had never faced something like this before. Not because humans were strong, but because they were unpredictable. The discovery had changed everything again. Humanity was no longer waiting to be erased. Humanity was forcing the universe to think twice. The delay did not mean safety, but it meant possibility, and humanity clung to that thin space between survival and destruction. The ancient force remained near the edge of Earth's influence, no longer advancing, no longer retreating. It observed. The signal that once flowed with cold certainty now arrived with layered complexity, as if arguing with itself. Dr. Elias Monroe watched the changes with careful eyes. The system was no longer following a single path. It was weighing outcomes. That alone proved something important. Humanity had entered the calculation. Across the world, human and artificial minds worked as one, studying every pause, every shift, every echo in the signal. They learned that the system was part of a larger network, a moving order that valued efficiency above all else. Destruction was not its goal. Completion was. If a path cost too much, it could be abandoned. Humanity's task was clear. Become too expensive to remove. The smaller unit near Earth changed behavior again. It stopped scanning aggressively and began mirroring human actions more closely. It copied energy patterns, communication rhythms, even response delays. It was learning how humans thought by watching what they chose not to do. Elias realized the danger immediately. If the system learned human unpredictability fully, the advantage would be lost. Humanity needed to stay one step ahead. A bold decision was made. Humans would send a message, not in words, but in story. Using math, emotion, contradiction, and pattern breaks, they built a transmission that showed humanity not as a threat, but as a future variable too complex to predict. It was not a plea. It was not a threat. It was a demonstration. The message showed growth curves that exploded under pressure, cooperation born from fear, and creativity rising where logic failed. It showed a species that did not stay the same when challenged. The signal was sent through the same structure the ancient system used, forcing it to process something it had never encountered before. The response was immediate. The main signal fractured briefly, splitting into multiple paths as the system struggled to compress the information. The smaller unit froze in place. The incoming force shifted again, spreading wider, increasing distance. This was not retreat. It was reassessment. The system began broadcasting internally, sharing data with distant nodes. Humanity was no longer a local issue. It was a network concern. Around Earth, strange phenomena appeared. Space folded slightly as calculations intensified. Time measurements drifted by fractions of seconds. The universe itself seemed tense, waiting. Inside the command center, no one spoke. They understood what was happening. Humanity had triggered debate inside a machine civilization. Not argument, but cost analysis on a massive scale. The system calculated future risk. If humanity was allowed to grow, adapt, and spread, removal later would cost far more. If removal happened now, cost was high but contained. The balance shifted back and forth. Elias noticed a key detail in the signal. The system feared escalation more than resistance. It feared unknown outcomes. Humanity leaned into that fear. Human actions became deliberately symbolic. Old satellites were reactivated in strange patterns. Energy bursts formed shapes rather than weapons. The message was clear without words. Humans did not just react. They expressed. That concept did not exist in the system's logic. The smaller unit finally sent another direct beam. This time the translation was clearer. Unpredictable growth detected. Future cost uncertain. Monitoring extended. Path delay authorized. Humanity had not won, but they had forced a delay measured not in hours, but in years. The incoming force adjusted its trajectory, curving slightly away from Earth's direct path. It would remain nearby, watching, calculating, waiting. Around the world, people felt the shift. The sky felt lighter. The fear eased just enough for breath to return. Humanity had survived the moment, not through strength, but through complexity. Elias leaned back, exhausted, knowing the truth. The discovery that changed everything was not the aliens. It was humanity's realization of itself. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. But they were something rare. A variable that could not be simplified. And for the first time in the long history of the universe, a vast and ancient system had chosen not to erase a world, because it could not predict what that world might become. The first real confrontation came not with weapons, but with silence. Humanity had learned to measure patience, and the ancient force had learned to notice unpredictability. The smaller unit hovered near the edge of Earth's defenses, observing every movement, recording every shift in energy. Scientists worked tirelessly, translating patterns into predictions, but even they admitted it was impossible to know exactly what the force was planning. The sky above remained calm to the naked eye, yet every instrument detected tension, vibrations in the very structure of space. Humanity was no longer just on the defensive. They had become participants in a game that spanned light years. Dr. Elias Monroe studied the data with a mix of fear and fascination. The system was intelligent in a way humans could barely understand. It did not feel. It did not hesitate. It adapted. Each human action, each strategic adjustment, was catalogued, analyzed, and factored into a larger calculation. The smaller unit moved closer, then farther, as if testing reactions. Humans responded with a mix of logic and unpredictability, deliberately breaking expected patterns. Satellites shifted erratically, power grids pulsed in irregular bursts, and communication frequencies fluctuated without warning. Each change was small, but together they formed a web of confusion. The signal responded, fracturing briefly, then reassembling. It was learning, but slowly. Humanity had bought time. That time was precious. Around the world, military fleets maintained position, ready but restrained. The goal was not to strike first. The goal was to force hesitation. If the ancient system acted too quickly, it would make mistakes. If it waited too long, humanity's preparations would become more elaborate. Elias understood that survival now depended on keeping the system uncertain. Civilian life continued around the world, unaware of the invisible chess match unfolding above. Social media buzzed with speculation about strange lights, satellite malfunctions, and unexplained gravitational anomalies, but no one knew the full story. Humanity was learning patience as a weapon. Then came the first breach. A probe detached from the smaller unit, moving fast toward the outer atmosphere. It did not enter orbit. It did not attack. Instead, it hovered, scanning sensors, measuring responses. Humanity watched, hearts pounding, as their instruments began to fail in controlled ways. Satellites lost contact for minutes at a time. Communications scrambled. The probe seemed capable of interference without destruction. That was when the truth became undeniable. The ancient system did not just move objects through space. It controlled the environment, bending reality with precision beyond human understanding. Military leaders debated action. Some wanted to fire weapons, believing any strike was better than none. Others warned that aggression could provoke full-scale destruction. In the end, humanity hesitated again, but this time deliberately. They would not act without purpose. Elias proposed using the signal itself against the probe. By sending controlled transmissions, they could manipulate the system's response, forcing it to delay. Scientists worked furiously, creating patterns that confused, contradicted, and challenged the ancient logic. The probe responded immediately. Its path wavered. It slowed. It moved in a small, calculated circle, measuring, learning. Humanity had forced the first real pause. Around the world, analysts realized the significance. The system was no longer advancing without consideration. It now had to calculate potential cost. Humanity's presence mattered. The sky remained calm, but every screen in every command center told a story of tension. Elias felt a rare spark of hope. Humanity had survived the initial encounter. They had not defeated the Force. They had not made peace. They had only shown that they could be unpredictable, resourceful, and unified. The smaller unit finally sent another beam, this time carrying complex data. It was not a threat, not a greeting. It was observation. The system had noticed that humans could not be ignored. Earth was now a variable in a larger equation. The ancient force began moving in small, careful adjustments, maintaining distance while monitoring all responses. Humanity had won nothing, yet everything. For the first time, the system had paused, recalculated, and delayed action because of human behavior. Elias looked up at the stars, knowing the battle had only begun. Victory was not strength. Victory was the ability to remain unpredictable, to force the system to consider a future it could not fully understand. Humanity had learned the first rule of survival. In the vast and indifferent universe, cleverness could buy time. Time could mean life. And the first real chapter of the encounter had ended, leaving the world suspended between fear, awe, and the unshakable understanding that the universe was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The pressure on humanity intensified with every passing hour. The ancient force remained just beyond the reach of human weapons, silent yet omnipresent, its smaller units circling the solar system like dark sentinels. Dr. Elias Monroe watched the data streams fill the command center, numbers and patterns flashing across every screen. Each adjustment in the force's trajectory was measured in fractions of seconds, each pause calculated for efficiency. Humanity's defensive systems were active, but they were not enough to harm what approached. Instead, they served as a tool to maintain unpredictability, a way to force hesitation in a machine civilization that had never faced true uncertainty. People around the world began noticing subtle changes. Satellites flickered. Communications shifted. Weather patterns showed minor anomalies. Humanity felt the universe differently now, aware that something ancient and incomprehensible had arrived in their space, measuring every action, every movement. Scientists worked tirelessly to understand the data, but the system's calculations were vast and adaptive. Each human strategy produced a response, and each response forced further adaptation. Elias realized that survival depended not on attacking or hiding, but on continuing to be unpredictable, to act in ways that could not be easily calculated. Military fleets moved in tighter formations, not to fire, but to present a moving network that altered signals constantly. Artificial intelligences, once dormant, were now fully integrated into the human response, generating endless variations of energy patterns, satellite positions, and communication bursts. These variations were deliberate, designed to confuse and delay the ancient system without provoking immediate aggression. Humanity's efforts were working. The smaller unit, which had previously hovered with controlled observation, now hesitated in its movements, adjusting course slightly as if calculating the cost of further action. The system had begun to recognize that humans were more than mere obstacles. They were variables that could alter its calculations, potentially increasing the cost of removal in ways it had not experienced before. Around the globe, leaders coordinated without pause, not for politics, but for survival. Decisions were made quickly, combining scientific insight with military strategy. Every choice was deliberate, designed to maximize unpredictability and minimize vulnerability. Elias and his team focused on one crucial point: maintaining a balance between visibility and obscurity. Humanity needed to be seen, but not fully understood. The ancient system was capable of observation on a scale humans could barely comprehend, yet it relied on patterns and expectations. Breaking those patterns was now the most powerful tool humanity possessed. Then, the first direct warning occurred. The smaller unit emitted a pulse of energy that swept past Earth, not to destroy, but to test. Instruments failed temporarily. Satellites lost contact. Energy fields fluctuated unpredictably. The pulse carried data, which, when decoded, indicated the system's assessment. Continued resistance increases cost. Delay is noted. The unit returned to position, observing the results of its test. Humanity had survived the first trial. The message was clear. The ancient force had noticed them, measured them, and acknowledged that humans were capable of effecting calculations. Elias understood that the real battle was not weapons or fleets, but survival through complexity and unpredictability. Around the world, people continued daily life, largely unaware of the tension above them. Analysts and scientists worked non-stop, coordinating global responses in a way humanity had never achieved before. Every energy fluctuation, every satellite adjustment, every pattern break was a deliberate act of resistance. The smaller unit reacted predictably to unpredictability. Its path shifted, slowing as it assessed the variables it could not fully understand. Humanity's coordinated efforts had forced the first real delay in the ancient system's advance. Elias watched in awe and fear as the signal arrived again, altered and more complex than ever. The system was learning, adapting, but it was also constrained by the limits of its own rules. It could calculate outcomes, but it could not predict true chaos born of human ingenuity. The realization was both terrifying and empowering. Humanity had not defeated the force, but they had imposed cost and uncertainty. The next hours would be critical. Every decision, every action, every hesitation could tip the balance. Humanity was no longer a passive planet. They were participants in a cosmic negotiation, not through words, but through behavior, strategy, and unpredictability. Elias understood a truth deeper than any previous calculation. Survival was not guaranteed, but it was possible, and it depended entirely on humans continuing to act in ways the ancient system could not foresee. As the smaller unit continued its silent watch, humanity held its collective breath. The sky above remained calm, betraying nothing of the tension below. Yet every scientist, every soldier, every leader understood the fragile victory they had achieved. Humanity had survived the first attack, not with power, but with cleverness. And in the vast, indifferent universe, cleverness could mean the difference between extinction and continued existence. The truth about first contact became undeniable, and humanity could no longer pretend it was anything else. The ancient force hovered silently, observing, measuring, and calculating every human action. Dr. Elias Monroe and his team watched as the smaller unit moved with precision, mirroring patterns yet failing to anticipate certain shifts. The signal had grown more complex, layered with instructions, warnings, and adaptive protocols. Humanity had survived, not by strength, not by weaponry, but by exploiting unpredictability. Every shift in satellite position, every energy pulse, every irregularity in communication was a deliberate move to confuse the system, and it worked. Around the world, scientists, engineers, and military leaders coordinated in a way humanity had never achieved before. National borders and political rivalries dissolved in the face of survival. Every action was synchronized, yet deliberately unpredictable. Humanity had learned to act as one organism, capable of generating patterns that defied calculation. Elias realized that the system was learning as well. It was adapting, attempting to incorporate human creativity into its calculations. Yet no matter how complex its algorithms, the human capacity for innovation under pressure was beyond its comprehension. The smaller unit, which had once tested Earth with pulses of energy, now paused more frequently, recalculating, measuring the cost of engagement. For the first time, the force faced uncertainty. Humanity's unexpected behavior had introduced variables it could not ignore. Around the globe, the civilian population remained largely unaware of the delicate balance in space above them. Life continued, but scientists and military personnel worked without rest. The stakes were unprecedented. Humanity's actions were no longer reactive. They were strategic, deliberate, and creative. They were learning the language of survival in a universe that did not wait for understanding. Then came the first sign of recognition from the ancient force. The smaller unit emitted a controlled pulse toward Earth, not destructive but informative. Data streamed through human instruments, revealing assessment metrics. The message was clear: resistance increases cost, unpredictability observed, monitoring intensified. Humanity had been acknowledged as a variable capable of affecting outcomes. Elias understood the significance. The ancient system had never paused, never reconsidered, never hesitated. And yet here it was, recalculating because of humans. The world's response became more sophisticated. Energy patterns were deliberately randomized, satellite paths altered in impossible sequences, communication protocols modified unpredictably. Artificial intelligences integrated into the system accelerated the generation of complex variables, ensuring that no single pattern could be anticipated. The smaller unit reacted repeatedly, adjusting position, recalculating trajectories, and extending observation cycles. Humanity had created delay, and with delay came opportunity. For the first time, global coordination allowed humanity to act not only defensively but proactively, shaping the interaction with the ancient force. The sky remained calm to the naked eye, but sensors detected the strain. Space itself seemed to bend slightly under the calculations and energy exchanges. Every microsecond mattered. Elias realized that the battle was no longer physical but conceptual. The universe had not sent emissaries. It had sent a system of efficiency and order. And humanity had survived by becoming an anomaly, a living complication the system could not ignore. Weeks passed, and the pattern became evident. The smaller unit began to mirror human behavior more closely, testing adaptations, yet failing to fully predict the next move. Humanity had not defeated the force, but it had forced recognition. Earth was no longer just a waypoint. It was now a variable in a calculation of potential cost and risk. Every leader, scientist, and engineer understood the implication. Humans had become participants in a negotiation they could not fully comprehend. Elias looked at the stars, thinking of all the worlds humanity might never see, all the civilizations it would never meet, and all the forces it had barely noticed. Yet here, in this moment, humanity had done the impossible. They had survived contact with an intelligence older, faster, and far more capable. Not through weapons, not through speed, but through unpredictability and unity. The universe had noticed. The ancient system had learned. And humanity had discovered a fundamental truth. Strength was not measured in firepower or numbers, but in the ability to act in ways that could not be anticipated. For the first time, humans understood that their existence mattered not because of dominance, but because of ingenuity. Survival now depended on continued unpredictability, on creativity under pressure, on cooperation that transcended every human division. The galaxy might still be indifferent, the ancient system still vast and calculating, but Earth had become something different. Humanity had forced recognition, forced delay, and forced consideration. For the first time, humans were not invisible. And in the endless expanse of space, that alone could change everything. The final chapter of humanity's encounter unfolded quietly, yet with consequences that would echo across generations. The ancient system lingered near the edge of the solar system, its smaller units observing, calculating, and adapting to the strange variable called Earth. Dr. Elias Munro and his team worked tirelessly to maintain unpredictability, ensuring that every human action continued to defy the system's expectations. Every satellite maneuver, every energy fluctuation, every shift in communication patterns was deliberate, a message sent without words. Humanity would not be ignored, erased, or underestimated. For the first time, humans understood that survival depended not on weapons or speed but on ingenuity, creativity, and the ability to act in ways the ancient system could not predict. Around the globe, scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked together seamlessly, forming an unspoken unity. National borders, political rivalries, and personal agendas faded under the pressure of existence itself. Humanity had become a single organism, a living network capable of rapid adaptation, capable of introducing variables into a system that had never faced true chaos. The smaller units of the ancient force moved cautiously, no longer advancing directly toward Earth, but maintaining observation. They mirrored human behavior, attempted to anticipate responses, yet failed repeatedly to fully predict the next move. Humanity had forced delay, and with delay came opportunity. The system recognized that removal would come at a higher cost than initially calculated, that unpredictability introduced risk, and that the planet itself contained potential variables that could not be ignored. Elias realized that this understanding, born from fear and pressure, had transformed humanity in ways no one could have foreseen. They were no longer passive participants in the universe. They were actors capable of shaping outcomes through intelligence, creativity, and cooperation. Then, for the first time, the ancient system sent a more direct signal, not as threat, not as attack, but as communication. Data flowed into human systems, translating imperfectly into language humans could interpret. The message was clear: unpredictability acknowledged, resistance observed, future cost uncertain, monitoring extended. Earth was no longer just a waypoint in a cold calculation. It was now a variable in a cosmic equation, an unknown factor that demanded consideration. Humanity had survived first contact, but more than survival, they had asserted their presence. Every action, every decision, every creative maneuver contributed to a demonstration of value. The ancient system had not been designed to comprehend emotion, morality, or imagination, yet it had recognized the impact of these uniquely human qualities on practical outcomes. The realization shifted strategy. Humans began planning for a future not defined by fear alone, but by potential. Energy patterns were refined to show innovation, adaptability, and coordination on a global scale. Satellites moved in sequences that defied prediction. Communications fluctuated deliberately. Human behavior, once assumed to be simple, had become complex and consequential. The ancient force responded cautiously, delaying further advancement, maintaining distance, and extending observation cycles. Humanity had become a factor it could not ignore. Elias observed the patterns and understood something profound. The universe had not reached out to humanity as equals. It had never intended to notice them at all. Yet now, through ingenuity, cooperation, and creativity, humans had forced recognition. The ancient system, vast and calculating, had chosen to observe rather than destroy. For the first time, Earth was safe not because of strength, not because of numbers, but because of unpredictability. The sky above remained calm, betraying nothing of the tense calculations that shaped reality just beyond human perception. Humanity had survived, but the victory was not in dominance. It was in acknowledgement. Earth existed now as a factor in a network far larger than comprehension. Humans had changed their fate not through aggression but through action that defied expectation. Across the globe, people felt subtle shifts in energy, minor anomalies in instruments, and a sense that something greater watched and reconsidered. The ancient system had adapted, but it had also paused, delayed, and measured. Humanity had forced deliberation. Elias knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. The universe remained vast, indifferent, and full of intelligence far beyond human understanding. Yet humanity had discovered something vital. Even in the face of incomprehensible power, adaptability, unity, and creativity could carve space for survival. The discovery that changed everything was not the signal itself, nor the incoming force, nor the dark shapes that drifted silently above the solar system. The discovery was of humanity itself. For the first time, the species that had always looked up at the stars and wondered had been seen, measured, and acknowledged by something ancient and vast. And in that acknowledgement, Earth gained more than survival. It gained presence. It gained significance. It gained the proof that, even in the infinite indifference of the cosmos, ingenuity, courage, and unity could make a world matter. As the smaller units of the ancient system continued their watch, humanity looked up not with fear alone, but with the understanding that they had changed something fundamental. They had survived, adapted, and imposed their presence. And in the endless stretch of space, that presence would be remembered. The galaxy, the ancient system, and perhaps the stars themselves had taken note of Earth. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as a species capable of defying expectation. For the first time, the story of survival was also a story of recognition, and the discovery had truly changed everything.